Today, Ethereum's upgrade to proof of stake begins. Binance making a major change that will affect Circle's USDC. And Congress is back in session. So should you expect any progress on crypto regulation? Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Kate Rooney. Digital currencies were rallying earlier this morning, but that lost some steam by noon Eastern. Bitcoin traded around $19,000. Ether, meanwhile, jumped to $1,600, and Solana traded above $33. Okay, let's talk about the top stories, starting with what's driving Ether prices higher. The Ethereum merge has officially begun. That's thanks to the launch of the Bellatrix upgrade this morning. Now, this isn't the merge itself, but the Bellatrix upgrade prepares the Beacon chain, which is the proof of stake blockchain for the merge. Vitalik Buterin said the final transition to proof of stake remains on track for some time between September 13th and 15th. Next, the world's largest crypto exchange is making a major change affecting stablecoins. Binance will automatically convert users' crypto from Circle's USDC, Pax Dollar, and TrueUSD into Binance's own dollar-pegged coin. In a blog post, the exchange said this change will take place on September 29th. It would enhance liquidity and wouldn't affect users' ability to withdraw funds in USDC, USDP, or TUSD, which are all different stablecoins. What this does is pool liquidity on that exchange. They call it unifying the order book. A good analogy to think about is trading for an exchange. So if you're trading FX, you're looking at the euro-US dollar pair or the euro-yen, for example. There's one trading pair per currency. There's one version of the US dollar. In crypto, though, you've got multiple versions of the US dollar, for example, and you have to pick the pair you're going to go with. By picking one dominant dollar-backed cryptocurrency and pooling these together, the idea is to increase liquidity and make it easier for traders. Coinbase made a similar move back in July. It unified their order books under USDC, which is Circle's stablecoin. USDC is also the dominant stablecoin on FTX. And while this may be seen as a hit to Circle and Paxos, could also weigh on the market's dominant player and their biggest competitor, Tether. Tether is the largest stablecoin by market cap, but it right now doesn't have an exchange partner and has to compete with this new pool of stablecoins. And last, the deadline for agencies to respond to President Biden's crypto executive order is here. Back in March, Biden signed a directive tasking federal agencies to look into potential rules and regulations for the crypto industry. The Treasury Department, for example, was asked to explore a potential CBDC, or a central bank digital currency, while the Justice Department was asked to research whether Congress should pass laws on crypto. The executive order set a 120-day deadline for that research, which happens to be today. For our main story of the day, we're going to focus on regulation here in the U.S. We're awaiting those reports from federal agencies and progress on regulation from Congress, which is now back from its summer recess. Crypto World's Jordan Smith spoke to Ari Redbord of TRM Labs about the potential for regulation this year and just how effective rules in the U.S. could really be.
We saw the deadline for Biden's executive order at the start of this week, and we have Congress returning from its summer recess. So with all of the focus on regulation in crypto, how likely is it that we'll see some sort of movement in terms of rulemaking by the end of 2022?
A couple things really sort of happening at one time. And as you mentioned, sort of the deadline is coming for the executive order. And really what that means is, look, the executive order, really the first time a US president ever spoke in a meaningful way about cryptocurrency at all, tasked the interagencies, so executive branch agencies, with coming back with reports on how they intend to, or sort of the best practices for regulating cryptocurrency in so many different areas, from environmental to consumer protection, law enforcement to sort of systemic issues. And really what we're going to see over the next few weeks is these agencies sort of respond with their plans. And we already have seen some of it. DOJ has come back with a plan on how it intends to continue to work with international partners. We've seen the US Treasury come back with a similar response. So we've already seen a lot of this. So I think the executive order, to your question, will definitely play itself out in terms of these responses. And what we'll start to develop is a clearer, at least sort of regulatory executive framework for how executive branch agencies intend to regulate or to think about sort of cryptocurrency. The real question is sort of how the Hill is going to ultimately move forward. You know, I think by recent counts, at least this summer, the last time I checked, there are about 50 bills, in some state or another on Capitol Hill that involve digital assets. And I think we're likely to see movement in certain areas. But I think if what we're really hopeful for is some sort of large, clear, comprehensive framework for digital assets, something like what was proposed by Senators Lummis and Gillibrand in the Responsible Innovation Act, I think we're probably going to wait for some time to see something like that really come together. But I think what we'll see is sort of more focus on certain areas. And I think one of those areas will be stable coins, where we'll see more activity.
Are there particular areas that stick out to you that need it more urgently? Is it stable coins? Are there exchanges? Are there things around, enforcement or illicit crypto transactions that need more clarity?
I think stable coins is really the area where we may see sort of more movement on Capitol Hill. U.S. Congress is really all about building consensus. And the stablecoin space is really one area where we've seen more and more consensus. And that's not just within the government, really public and private. In the wake of the collapse of Terra, the stablecoin project, regulators globally started to talk about, and really with support of industry, the need for stablecoin projects to be fully backed by a reserve currency of some sort. We've seen regulators globally. We saw New York Department of Financial Services come out and say, if you want to be a stablecoin project licensed in this jurisdiction, you have to have reserves. And I think what we're starting to see more and more, we've seen this in the UK, similar sort of proposals around regulation. And sort of one other proof or indicia of that is in July, we really thought we were going to see some stablecoin related legislation leave the House Financial Services Committee. It was sort of held up. But I think at that time, we even started to say, hey, look, September is going to roll around. We actually may see more action. And that will be a bill that does tackle questions around reserve for stablecoin projects. But I do think before we see some sort of, what they call MiCA in the European Union, this comprehensive, large framework for digital assets, I think it's still going to take some time there in the US.
TRM just had new research on how ISIS is using NFTs to fund terrorism. Can you talk about what you found in that investigation?
Last week, through a series of tweets and other things, it was identified that ISIS was really for the first time that a terrorist organization was using an NFT for purposes of propaganda. And look, in the age of the internet, propaganda proliferated on social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook and other types of places, but those was centralized. And what we saw were those platforms or those social media platforms deplatform this type of content. But look, in the age of crypto, where NFTs live and move on immutable ledgers that are forever, we're starting to see, and this is maybe the first case where illicit actors, particularly terrorist financiers, are using these types of platforms where they can't be taken down for propaganda purposes. Now, so it's really, we're just starting to see this. This was an ISIS supporter who put on some propaganda related to events in Afghanistan last week, and then build off of that a number of other NFTs. But what it really shows is that there are going to be evolving illicit finance risks in the cryptocurrency space. And this latest sort of, example through the use of NFTs is just one of those. But I think the good news is, today we have more visibility on these types of transactions than we've ever had. This is just an example of illicit actors adopting, new technology for sort of their old purposes. And I know it'll be a focus of law enforcement moving forward.
Can guidance here in the US really stop a concerted effort like that from bad actors in another part of the world? Or is this something where it's going to take global collaboration on crypto rules and crypto enforcement?
That is why there is so much focus on the executive order, on the need for global cooperation. In fact, the first responses, Treasury and DOJ, were literally around just that, the need to work with our international partners, foreign partners, in order to stop illicit finance, in order to build out, compliance regimes. Because look, any system is only as strong as its weakest link. And the reality is the nature of crypto, that cross-border value transfer at the speed of the internet means that, you need regulators to have consistent regulation across different jurisdictions. And, MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, is doing extraordinary work. We've seen a lot of work out of Dubai and the UAE. The US has a strong, anti-money laundering regime in place. We've seen similar work from the EU and the UK, but each of those regulators, and I've spoken to them, would say, look, we're only as strong as sort of the weakest jurisdiction when it comes to these controls. So it really is, international cooperation is really more important than ever in the age of crypto. I think we're starting to see it. But what the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, which is like the global anti-money laundering body, would say is that their number one priority right now is that implementation, is that international adoption of standards because of this issue that you identified.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow with a lot more. We'll see you then.